Today we're talking about Enneagram Type 9. So basically with this video, I'm finishing the series that I started on describing and explaining the 9 Enneagram types with respect to their general characteristics, fears, motivations, and the triads that they are part of. So Enneagram 9 is also known as the Peacemaker, and this is the type that we will be focusing on today. So tune in for that. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's dive in. So, Enneagram 9, as I said, is also known as the Peacemaker, or sometimes we also call it the Mediator. This is a type that is basically at the top of the Enneagram Circle. If you think of the visual representation of the Enneagram types, we have Enneagram 9 at the top of the circle, which symbolically suggests that this type kind of encompasses all the other types or draws in all the other types. This is why in some Enneagram articles or books, you will see this like reference to the idea that Enneagram 9 incorporates a lot of the characteristics that other types might have, which is why sometimes they might struggle to find their own type, or they might be the people who take the longest in discovering their true Enneagram type, because they feel like they can relate to all of the types. Now, I'm not saying that, this is the only way in which someone can be struggling with their type. It's normal to relate to several types because they all represent fundamentally human issues. But I'm just saying that for the 9, this can be a little bit of a stronger tendency or a little bit of a stronger pattern. So, like I said in some of the previous videos, 9 together with 8 and 1 are part of the gut triad or the instinctive triad. This means that their core focus is creating autonomy or independence for themselves by trying to get away from the feeling of rage or anger. This is something specific to all these types in this group, 8, 9, and 1. However, each of these types has a specific strategy of doing that. And for Enneagram 9, this is a strategy that refers to staying away from any kind of conflictual situations, whether those conflictual situations are internal or external. This is important. It's not just that the 9 wants to withdraw from explicit conflict with other people, from a fight, but also from any situation that caused them to feel like they need to experience an inner kind of conflict. And this is very important. And this is why a lot of times 9s are seen as people who are a little bit passive. This is not necessarily true for all 9s. Some of them might be more passive than others, but the general idea or the red thread behind it is that the 9 wants to kind of withdraw emotionally from things that are uncomfortable, from negative emotional experiences, especially those that create tension or conflict, and they try to frame things in such a way that, everything is fine, there's no problem, things are positive, etc., etc. Sometimes this attitude can cause them to be very passive, not engaged, not wanting to, assert themselves or say what their real opinion is, but not always. Again, it depends a lot on the level of maturity, on the MBTI type, on cultural aspects, on gender, and other such things as well. So I just don't want to have this misconception that all 9s are passive or boring, because I've heard this in the community. So if we look at the different triads or groups that Enneagram 9 is part of, besides being part of the gut triad or the instinctive triad, 9 is also part of the positive outlook group, together with types 2 and 7. I also talked about this in those videos, but I'm going to refer to it again. So when it comes to dealing with emotions, Enneagram 9 has a tendency to try to prioritize positive emotions, positive perspectives over things. A type that is more likely to want to stay optimistic for a longer period of time, which, can be good in the sense that Enneagram 9s can be lovely people to be around because they can create this harmony, this positive emotional atmosphere for everyone around them, making people feel comfortable, tolerated, understood, supported. I would say that probably out of all the types, 9 is the most likely to make people feel at home and comfortable. Kind of like you can just be whoever you are and I'm okay with that. They can be highly, highly tolerant. However, 9s can tend to neglect their problems or tend to neglect their negative feelings or want to suppress their negative feelings. And because of that, they might struggle with communicating how they really feel about something, because a lot of the times they might not even admit it to themselves that they have an opinion or a need or a preference. And they kind of want to let other people decide or deal with the negative emotions while they stay focused on the positive ones. The problem with this attitude, which is applicable to types 2 and 7 too, is that the more we neglect issues or negative feelings, the more likely it is that these things will come back and haunt us. And, the more you kind of suppress a negative feeling, the more it grows in intensity, and then it can be very hard to deal with it. And then from another perspective, if we look at the other types of triads, Enneagram 9 is part of the withdrawn group, together with types 4 and 5. So this means that in general, type 9 has a tendency to move away from people in order to get their needs met. When talking about type 8, I said that these people move against other people to get their needs met. And for the 9, this reflects in a tendency to move away from people to get their needs met. So a tendency to want to disengage, to isolate, to be alone, in order to make sure that they satisfy their own needs and satisfy their own issues. The attitude that we see in 9s, just like in 5s and 4s, is that they prefer working on their own. They prefer being on their own. They're more comfortable being not necessarily lonely, but kind of independent. And they prefer not being leaders or being competitive. These are things that are not particularly interesting to them. They would rather just be alone, be themselves, focused on what interests them, maybe even get caught up in their own imagination. A lot of the times people from this group are referred to as dreamers, because they do have a tendency to kind of find comfort in their own mind, in their own imagination, in the things that really matter to them. So for that reason, the tendency is to kind of move away from people and make sure that they get their needs met. Okay. Now, if we look back a little bit and discuss integration and disintegration. When it comes to disintegration, so the way Enneagram 9 changes or transforms in times of severe stress, we will notice 9 getting some of the negative characteristics of type 6, the loyalist. This can mean that Enneagram 9 can be highly focused on wanting to create safety and security for themselves. They might become more anxious than usual and more worried about the future and how things will turn out. They are also more likely to try to keep doing things for other people to show their reliability and consistency, but in a way that can become a bit overwhelming to them and stressful to them. So this is a way in which Enneagram 9 can kind of borrow some of these negative characteristics of type 6. On the other hand, in times of health, development, integration, Enneagram 9 can start looking like a healthier version, let's say, of type 3, the achiever. So remember how I said earlier that 9s sometimes struggle with saying how they really feel, or going for what they want, or setting goals for themselves and being proactive because of wanting to avoid that tension that comes from the process. Well, they might actually take a few steps back and try to move towards 3, the achiever, by focusing on setting goals for themselves and making sure that they clarify what it is really that they want to achieve, what it is really that they want to accomplish. And through that, they work progressively to accomplish these goals and start expressing what it is that they care about, start expressing what it is that they really, consider to be important. They become more proactive, they become a little bit more extroverted, more assertive, more likely to work hard to meet those particular goals. Okay, so these are my general thoughts with respect to the general characteristics of type 9. What else do you feel like adding with respect to this type? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching this video, thank you for being with me, and see you next time with another video on typology.